I'm Reed Corbett. I'm a professor at East Carolina University, and I'm a program head here at the UNC Coastal Studies Institute in charge of the Coastal Processes program. And the project that we're talking about is one that was originally funded by the Corps of Engineers, the Duck Field Research Facility, to start designing and implementing an estuarine observing system. And the place we decided to start was in the Albemarle Sound. The Albemarle Sound being one of the largest estuarine systems in North Carolina with very little monitoring that was taking place. And what we're really interested in is developing a long-term monitoring network. If you want to look at change in our estuaries, you need to know what you're changing from. You need some baseline data, whether it's water quality changes, water level changes, meteorological changes. And that sort of data can be used for understanding day-to-day dynamic processes, wind, waves, or sort of these long-term changes that are occurring along our coast. And so what we did is we developed sort of an observing package that we put out in late 2007, 2008 to look at meteorological changes, so wind, barometric pressure, photosynthetic radiance. So it gives you some idea of how sunny it is, right? So what cells are using for photosynthesis. And so this package was placed on an aid to navigation, basically a large tripod that the Coast Guard uses to mark a channel. It's actually one of the markers used to mark the intercoastal waterway. And so this package includes instruments to collect data on meteorological parameters, but it's also connected to several sensors that are actually in the water column. And we also put out another package that was interested in water quality parameters. What's the dissolved oxygen, the salinity, the water temperature. And then finally, we put out an instrument package that was measuring waves and currents, as well as turbidity, the amount of solids, the amount of particles that are in the water column.
And so this is connected to a cellular modem, which then we can access that data directly, and so you could actually get the data online through the internet real time. Now we are just sort of recording that data internally, and so we have to come out and get the data package every 6 months or so.
And so we often will go out there and also collect cores. A core is simply taking a tube and inserting it into the seafloor and then pulling those sediments out. And we want to do this to where we don't really disturb the sediments, and so we can actually look at how the sediments change down core, how they're changing with depth into the seafloor. And that gives us some understanding of how this environment has changed over long-term cycles. We can link this to decadal or even century scale events that are occurring. How are things changing on decades? How are things changing on centuries? And the sediments hold that information. So if we can make that link between our observing package and what's occurring today with what's occurring in the past, then we have an extremely long record of environmental change in this system. We always hear about how climate is changing, the environment's changing, the Outer Banks are changing. But we sort of do it often in an arm-waving way. Things are changing, the beaches are eroding. And until you actually have data to demonstrate that things are changing, that's all it is sort of arm-waving and talk. And so what we're trying to do is provide that data to understand what changes are actually occurring. This package, this observing site for us, is getting that data, that long-term data set you need to understand change that's occurring in our estuarine systems. And until you have a data set that extends beyond seasons, it's hard to attribute those changes you're seeing to anything but day-to-day dynamics. We live in a really dynamic system. But over years, you can start to see how things are changing, how temperatures are increasing, how wave climate might be changing because changes in the wind field. Those are the connections that we're trying to provide. Getting the data over a long period of time will provide the information we need for understanding what changes are actually taking place within our estuarine system.